In this episode, we take a deeper look at Sprawlopolis.
Hi, welcome to Button Shy Deep Dive, a podcast where we talk about games from the Button Shy catalog. I'm Ian Howard. I'm the narrative lead at Button Shy Games.
I am Jason Tagmire. I hate the word owner. I hate the word anything like that. I started Button Shy Games. That's cool. I like that.
And today we're talking about a game you've probably all heard of, Sprawlopolis. For those who don't know, Sprawlopolis is a cooperative game for 1 to 4 players that promises a tidy city-building experience in 15 to 20 minutes. Designed by the team of Stephen Aramini, Danny Devine, and Paul Kluka, and illustrated by Danny Devine, it was published by Button Shy in 2018. The crowdfunding campaign on Kickstarter in early 2018 had 5,538 backers and received a total of $107,749. As of this recording on September 19th, 2024, it has an overall rank of 473 on BoardGameGeek with an average rating of 7.3. All right.
So that's real quick to interrupt you. Sorry, already. You said tiny city building games, but I thought you said tidy, like Tidy.
I did say tidy.
Okay, that's because I thought that was like super good, and it hit me as tiny but tidy. I love that.
Yeah, kind of works of both there.
Exactly.
All right, so that's the kind of boring number stuff out of the way. But let's talk about Sprawlopolis.
Let's do it.
Sprawlopolis is one of the sort of, I think, linchpins of the Button Shy catalog. Let's try and, as Button Shy always does, distill it down even further. So let's take Sprawlopolis and see if we can describe it in as little as 5 words. Now,
should it be exactly 5? Or did you do exactly 5?
I did exactly 5.
Yeah, let's do exactly 5.
Exactly 5.
That's going to make it harder.
Yeah, that's the rule. So I have my 5, and I'm going to go ahead and just put it out there.
Go for it.
Okay. Hang on. I actually have to read it. Overlapping quadrants and conflicting goals.
Yeah, that's good.
That's it?
Yeah, conflicting is good. That's a key struggle of every player.
Right. I was trying to it's so difficult to describe a game in 5 words. But I feel like conflicting goals is such a key piece of it. Like everything is kind of butting up against everything else. And then overlapping quadrants, just establishes what you're doing on the table. So I felt that was a pretty good, basic summary. But you have obviously had a lot more experience with this. So
yeah, and I'm trying to think of who my audience is for these 5 words. Like, am I pitching the game, or am I just, quick like bullet point? But so I know a word. I'm gonna go with simple city building with complex combinations.
Ooh, I like that.
I think that covers. So the city building, like the cards are simple looking. There's just the 4 colors. The details don't matter. So there's simplicity on the fronts of the cards and complexity on the backs. And that's kind of what I wanted to hit.
Yeah, I think that's really good. And the complex combinations, because it is a game that sort of emerges as you play it. And you discover like, oh, this seems so simple.
Yeah, exactly.
And one of the things that I personally like about Sprawlopolis is that you can sort of play it on 2 levels. Like you can play it the way I do, which is very dumb. And I look at the goals. I try and get a quick idea of what I want.
It's similar to how I play.
Yeah. And then I just start laying cards. And, I don't always look for the absolute best play. But I look for a pretty good play. Or you can be one of the people, and we've seen a lot of these people who really like math it out, take their time, and have these like phenomenal scores that I could never achieve. And I love that there's these sort of 2 approaches that you can take with the game.
And I think playing it solo versus multiplayer can kind of push you to some of those directions, because multiplayer, almost every multiplayer game that I play of it is very casual. Like, let me just get the best scoring I can get, pass it to the next person. All have fun with this. Let's see if we can collectively do it without breaking our collective brains or, stopping to a halt. Playing solo is like, I need to win this, like there's no other reason I'm here other than I'm going to get this right and win it. So I think you'll see some extremes on the both ends of that on who you're playing with and if you're playing with anyone else.
Yeah, but it's a neat. It's just so neat that it can support all of these different styles of play and levels of engagement, and that's, I think, part of what has given it such an enduring legacy is that you can kind of come at it with whatever mindset you want, and still have a good time.
So Sprawlopolis actually began, the origin of Sprawlopolis actually began with Circle the Wagons, which was our first Button Shy game that we had entered in an 18-card contest. But that had some of the core mechanisms that we really liked in terms of the 3 variable scoring goals. That was in Circle the Wagons. And so we wanted to take that mechanism and apply it to a cooperative game. And so we got to work on basically a pyramid building game that eventually became Sprawlopolis. And so we developed a whole game based on building a pyramid cooperatively. And then after it had already been signed, we actually kind of pumped the brakes on that because another game had come out that from a different publisher, but it had kind of a similar aesthetic, and so we didn't want to pursue that theme anymore. So Jason had asked, what if we came up with a city building theme? So we just kind of took that challenge and rethemed it from the ground up, and eventually that became Sprawlopolis.
So I'm going to ask a couple questions about Sprawlopolis. Some of these will be historical, some will be more conceptual. I guess the first question for me is, where did the city building theme come from? Like, was that present originally? Was it added by Button Shy?
So it's interesting. So if anybody doesn't know the history of Sprawlopolis, it started with the game Circle the Wagons. We signed that in like 2016 or I think signed it in 2016, came out in 2017. And the whole idea of that was the cards had 4 quadrants with map building and an interesting draft. But it was a 2-player game primarily with a solo mode. We discussed making a new game, me and the designers, or even maybe they just submitted the new game. It's going way back, but like we'd worked together and we were up for doing more work together. Mm-hmm. So they submitted the first version of Sprawlopolis, which was called, I believe it was Pharaoh's Pyramid, which to me was like the least exciting name, super interesting theme, and the way that the game played out was really cool. Basically, cards start out on a row of, I believe, 6, then 5, then 4, then 3, 2, 1, and they still had the 4 quadrants. The scoring goals were on the back, exactly the same as Circle Wagons and what is now Sprawlopolis. But it had this very specific shape that you were building, which was really cool. The problem is 6 plus 5 is 11, plus 4 is 15, plus 3 is 18, plus 2 plus 1 gets you to 21. And it was at a time when Button Shy was established, but not established enough that I don't think everybody assumed 18 was our only cap number. 21 right. Might not have been a problem, to where now we've said it's a problem enough that I think most designers know that. So they submitted it with 21 cards. I said, we can't do that. What can we do? Can we chop off the 6 at the bottom? And then it's just like not enough. I think it actually was 24 cards because you needed 3 to flip over for the goals.
Oh, for the goals, sure.
So yeah. It was like, can we do a 6-card expansion? But then it's like, we don't do expansions to complete the game. Yeah. So it like can't be required. But then maybe you get rid of the 6 and it's a smaller one, but just slightly better with expansion. And then it came back at some point. I was just like, I think the team was like, I don't think we can make it work with fewer cards and be as good. And being as good was a goal.
Yeah.
It was a very high goal there.
A good goal to have.
So I said at this time we were looking for a city builder game. And I don't know why we were specifically looking for a city builder game, because I don't remember city builder games being a super popular thing in 2017-ish.
No.
It wasn't like the trend of the year, but I think it was something that we just didn't have. Like in our lineup, by then we'd had, Circle the Wagons, Stew, Arcane Bakery, and going back, all the early games that were everything that you could think of, Superplex Wrestling, Pickpockets, Ninja. Like, it was very early Button Shy where we were very all over the place.
Yeah, kind of throwing stuff at the wall and seeing.
Yeah, exactly. And like, city building seemed like maybe a little bit of legitimacy in the industry, I think. Like, it was like, city building is the kind of thing that better publishers do. So city building came up on a list, and I kicked it back to them. And then they sent me 95% of what Sprawlopolis is today.
Oh, really?
Like,
okay.
A few months later or whatever. Little bit of development, definitely not as much as we do now, but they make solid games to where, it didn't need much.
Yeah.
We kicked a few things back here and there, just tightening up scores. The scoring balance on those cards 1 through 18 and making sure that card 1 had enough negative points so that you're not scoring a lot more than 1 point on that card, and card 18 allows you to score a lot of points, so it has a lot of positives, but it's not, you're not going to score like 1 or 2 points, whatever. That balance took them quite a while, but it came back as the city builder that is Sprawlopolis, and stuck with that, and was perfect. Like, it nailed everything. I missed the pyramid game. I have a copy of it, so whatever. Everyone else misses it more than me, I guess. But I feel like it's and I think that we've talked about, like, could we ever do the pyramid game? And it's like, oh, well, it shares so much with Sprawlopolis. Like, everything was pivoted over. But it's cool and unique that I think it was a cool thing that shifted and evolved.
Yeah, that's so fascinating to kind of hear that it ended up sort of being a very theme-first design, only because the mechanics were kind of already there.
Yeah.
It's sort of a neat marriage of like taking something that already exists and completely repackaging it to what I think it sounds like ended up being the best fit.
Yeah, I agree.
Overall. Yeah, that's really a neat thing to hear.
Hi, this is Daniel Devine, one of the co-designers of Sprawlopolis. I wanted to share one of the coolest things I've heard about any of the games I've ever worked on. And there's a fan on Board Game Geek that during the pandemic posted that they played through all 816 combinations of the Sprawlopolis goals, and they were able to beat all of the combinations. Some of them were really hard. It took them longer than others. But they posted this image of their cards. They used one copy of the game until they had beat everything with it. And those cards are so worn out from the amount of plays that it's just an image that lives rent-free in my brain. Like, whenever I look up at my copy, I can see this faded version of this person that played through it over 1,000 times. And it just means the world to me as a designer to know that I created something that there's that many people out there that enjoy. Just with other parts on Board Game Geek, there's people that run like weekly combinations that everybody tries to beat together. There's just this incredible group of fans behind it, and it means a lot to me. And I love looking at all these things on Board Game Geek and seeing people enjoy it. So thank you, and thanks for playing.
As far as I can tell, and I came to Button Shy a little bit later, but as far as I can tell, Sprawl was really the first big hit, or certainly one of the biggest hits, and remains so to this day. So how did that change things for Button Shy as a company, and I guess you personally as well?
So as far as it being the first big hit, like we came out with stuff like movie plots and like these small Kickstarters that we did every month for a year, and we would do $2,000, $1,500, $4,000, $6,000, and two of them did like 10 to 20, which at the time was like, this is out of control. So that was like, this is a big hit. And then, but it was just those two. Like other ones went back down to, 5 to 7, and we would hit 10, and it was like 10,000 is a good number. It feels like we'll break even and we're in a good position. And then we hovered around that, maybe 10 to 20. And then Sprawlopolis did 107 or so on Kickstarter, 107,000.
Yeah.
And from day one, you could feel this campaign was like buzzing.
Yeah.
Each day was, when you watch Kickstarter metrics, they start big, they drop low, they go up a little bit at the end. And I don't remember specifically if Sprawlopolis was just less of a low or if it was, a little more steady in that middle. But those middle days were moving so well.
Yeah.
Just the buzz around the game. And what caused that? I mean, it followed Circle the Wagons, which was very successful for us at the time. And just kind of bounced off of that, but I feel like solo sells everything.
Solo helps.
I think just that early buzz was people playing it solo, within our networks and reviewers, whatever. And the color of the game popped and just everything went, it hit on all these right levels that I will never fully understand. But when you look at it, you sort of understand that it could have. I don't know why it did, but I know that it had something special going. So it took off. That ended at $107,000, and I said, "How are we going to do this? How are we going to fulfill this?" It was how many backers did you say? Is it 4,000 maybe?
Yeah, I can get the number.
It's definitely in that range.
5,500, which is a lot. That's a lot.
Which even today is a lot. Like
yeah.
So, like, it was just me and my wife at the time. And I had other people who helped out, came around and did some development help, came around and did some assembly help. But for the most part, that whole campaign was going to be mostly me and her working out of our house. I had a little spot we did some work out of, but it was too small for that. I wound up renting like a room it was the worst. It was on the second floor of this, like, I think there was like a dance studio below it or something like that. But like we hauled all of those boxes up there and then worked out of there to like assemble the games and all. But I mean, for the most part, it was me and my wife fulfilled the bulk of that campaign, with day jobs and everything else. But I decided as soon as Sprawlopolis was as successful as it was, that I was just going to have to quit my job. Like, the reason for quitting my job wasn't that, we got a bunch of money in from Sprawlopolis, we can afford to do this. Because I absolutely couldn't afford when I did it. It was that I can't do this job and fulfill this project. I don't think we can do both. Yeah. But more importantly than that was, we've got this opportunity now. We've reached 5,500 people, whatever. We're doing a new game every month. We've always done a new game every month. How can I take this and grow the company? Because if I don't take the chance now, I'll never take it. I'll never take that chance. I'll never have that chance. And I was maxed out on my, like, working 40 hours a week at work, working 30 to 40 a week on Button Shy. I can't do any more. And something would have to give at some point. So I decided I'm going to quit my job, and stuff blew up at my job at the same time. Like, just like it stunk at all ends. And like, I spoke up about some issues there, and they were like, if you don't like it here, you can leave. And I was like, fine, whatever.
Well, thanks. Yeah,
that's fine.
I was planning on it. I kind of have to.
I was like, I'm good. And then they like begged me to come back, but whatever.
I don't think you made a bad choice there, though. I mean,
no, looking back,
the right choice.
It was a choice that I had to make in order to grow the company. And Button Shy wouldn't exist if I didn't make that choice, because I would have burnt out. I wouldn't have been able to put in the time to make it any better, and we would have just struggled. So we did it. I took on a part-time job just because I was afraid, because I needed the money. I had 3 kids and, a mortgage, and my wife, she teaches, and there wasn't a lot of money in our house to begin with. We were already pushing it. So I quit. I took on a part-time job. 3 months in that part-time job, I ran out of time, even with that, with just how much Sprawlopolis brought on to, the company here. And the next campaign did like that normal 10 grand again. So it wasn't a big, like, now we're at the $107,000. Like, it was a very slow build from there on to where when that game came in, it was successful in sales after that, and then expansions for it. And it was just this awesome slow growth that really helped push.
Yeah. And I can't imagine without, that big drive, that any of the rest of this would have been possible. You would still be working and trying to make it all happen in your off hours. And
yes. And that everybody tries that in this business, doing it on the side. And I think for long success, you can't, like, it's just it'll exhaust you, and you won't be able to put into it what is needed for that longevity.
Yeah. On the other hand, if you don't have a Kickstarter that does $100,000, it's really hard to have that push and actually get out there. So it worked out. I think that the effort that you put in to get to that point then allowed you to, take that next step.
My name is Dr. Laszlo Korossy. I teach urban politics at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, and I want to talk about my favorite game in the world, Sprawlopolis. This game has been nothing short of life-changing for me. This has become my favorite pastime, and in the 6 years I've had it, I play it multiple times a week. It is a game I fell in love with long before I ever played it, because the first time I glanced at it, take a look. This is a game of 18 cards, 4 blocks each, showing different types of parts of a city. That's 72 individual blocks, and the artist, Danny Devine, did not replicate any of them even once. Each one of them is a unique, tiny vignette of urban life and existence. And when you build a city in Sprawlopolis, what you're doing is you're building a story of a community. That's really important to me, because a city isn't just buildings and roads. There are a lot of board games out there about buildings and roads and putting them in the right places to maximize your victory points. But Sprawlopolis is actually about the people. You start out with 18 different goals, some of which are going to work really well together, and some of which are going to be super, super frustrating if you draw them at the same time. And what you need to do is you need to build a city that's going to satisfy all your constituents, that's going to satisfy several goals at once. And sometimes it's going to work out great, and sometimes it's not, because that's exactly how cities are. This is the first game that takes building cities seriously, and it's a game that happens to wrap up and fit into my pocket and be able to go with me anywhere I want. I can play this with others, I can play this with myself. I have complete control over my entertainment when I have Sprawlopolis, and I also have a beautiful story of what it is to be human.
Sprawlopolis has been around now for a long time, and as a lot of people know, there's been expansions, and then there's been these kind of spin-off sequel games, Agropolis, Naturopolis, and there's even one more coming. So as you're moving through and you're sort of returning to this concept, what lessons did you take from the original Sprawlopolis that you could apply to now expanding this in all these different directions?
So it's funny because, like, all right, right now we're working on Casinopolis, which is the casino version. We called it a trilogy: Sprawlopolis, Agropolis, Naturopolis. They all combine. You can play them together with the Combopolis expansion and all. But we said we're not going to tie ourselves to all the specific rules from those for new Opolis games. So Casinopolis is like a new one. It doesn't technically combine, although someone's going to do it. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
But
people will do it for sure.
As we're making this one, it comes up daily, like just in the artwork, like don't overcomplicate anything. Like it needs to be 4 colors that you can erase from your brain as you're making these tough decisions. But it can't just be 4 colors. You need to have these details in there. But don't have too many details because it's going to prevent you from looking at all the other stuff. So it's like a beautiful simplicity in the visuals of the original that are really tough to carry on as we continue this. It's such a hard point of like, make it complex but make it not complex, make it kind of hide from the eye, but it should be there if people look for it. So on a visual end, it's been tricky because it really got it right the first time, and now it's like emulating it for new ones.
Yeah,
But
how do you get that lightning again? You know,
yeah,
back
and
in
like
that bottle.
with each one, there's new tricky parts because like Agropolis, we added animals. So the whole, each one added something new and interesting. In Agropolis, we added the animal pens, but it was chickens, cows, and pigs. And a car is this big on the card, so how big is a chicken?
Right.
You know, so it's like fudging the scale a little bit, and then Naturopolis added the little campsites and the rivers, and now this one adds these little like slot machine icons on the roads, which are really cool. It's on the what do they call it, the strip. But this one we're also trying to make it look dark, like Vegas. Like it's not it's just a casino town or whatever. But like you look at anything in Vegas, it's dark. It's the lights that like make it feel like a casino land. Like
Right.
Vegas during the day does not feel like your image if you were going to play a game based off of it.
Right.
Like a game that's about the casino and the gambling and all that. So trying to get some darkness in there, but try to get those little bit of details, but try to make everything just one color, but every color needs a little bit of black to feel like it's night. Like it's so tricky on a visual end. So on a mechanics side, and the designers would know a lot more about this because they do it all. We just fine tune and give some suggestions and all. But the thing that I see is like, one, and I've done development on all of them a little bit, and I've designed some of the expansions, so I know a little bit of insight onto that. But it's how do you add like one new thing and have that new thing be able to allow for 18 new scoring conditions.
Right.
Because scoring conditions, and they're all unique. There's no scoring conditions in any games that are the same as each other. There's some that like riff off of each other. I think the 18 card has always been about like rows and columns in every game in some fashion. But we don't want to repeat one and just have the theme change. We want to have new ones. So with the pens in Agropolis, there were 3 different ones. So it was like the parks in Sprawlopolis. They don't have a road on them. They can score in certain ways, but this one, they don't have a road on them, and there's 3 different ones. So you can have pigs next to chickens or whatever as scoring goals that you couldn't have where you had park next to park. Mm-hmm. You can have pig next to chickens, and you can have pen next to pen. So it opened up the design space for the scoring conditions. When it came time for Naturopolis, we wanted to add the rivers, and I remember pitching some stuff to the designers, which I actually have the card of it like right there. I had a thought that the rivers should come from like the corners of the cards.
Oh,
and
interesting.
They don't like, now they come from the sides and they're just like roads, but they're rivers. And coming from the corner made it look a little too complicated, and it was just a little more chaotic. Like and nature ultimately should feel calming. So having this new position on the card was just a little too much. But when they suggested, no, it should be where the roads are, it introduced this whole new thing. Rivers can't touch roads. So now when you play Naturopolis, it's different than when you play Sprawlopolis, where any roads can touch. So you have a placement restriction on top of any other, scoring goals that you're trying to do. There's never been a placement restriction before, other than like you can't tuck under or whatever.
Right.
So there was a placement restriction, and then we added the campsites, and then campsites contributed to 1/3 of the scoring goals or whatever. So, and then rivers as well. Like, so adding that one new thing each time opens up your design space, because otherwise it would just feel repetitive and feel like the same game with something slapped onto it. And it's crucial that it doesn't,
Yeah.
That would be the easy way out and the cheap way out. and would kill the line instantly.
Yeah. But it's fascinating. I mean, from a design standpoint, it's like, well, how do you think of the one thing? How do you keep everything the same and you change one thing and make something that feels fresh and new? That is a very it's a tightrope to walk.
It is. And as a designer, you almost want to have like 10 new things just so you can mess with them.
Absolutely.
But it's that strength and the simplicity is that there are already 10 things, or not even 10 things. There's only like 5. So if there's 5 things, you've got, 4 different things. You got color, you got a road, and whatever. Adding one is so impactful when that number of things that you have is so low.
Yeah.
So I try to keep that as a design philosophy, which is, you want enough little elements that interact with each other, but the fewer you have, the more impactful one is. I've always wanted to make that game where like you can release 1 card expansions that are incredibly impactful. The game plays with 6 cards at once. If you introduce 1 new card, remove 1, it's pretty impactful. It's like, I think of Marvel Snap as like that tiny small deck. You can see the difference in swapping 1 card in your deck.
Right.
Just after a few games. But if you're playing a 60-card Magic deck or a Commander deck, your 1 card will never make an impact.
Right.
So that's, I think, key to like Sprawlopolis and any of those games where just one thing can change so much is an amazing design space to be in, because you can make a lot of those one things and they all feel really good and impactful.
Yeah, and they have. I mean, each new version is like, wow, that's that does radically change the framework.
And with designing expansions, it's like beaches, like just there's a border. It's like
exactly.
That's it. It's just a border, and like keeping it that simple, I think, is important. As soon as you go, there's a border, but there's this and there's this, and it just becomes like, we're just playing a different game or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, that simplicity is hard to find, and it's great when it works.
Yeah, it's really cool. And I mean, it's a testament, to the design team that they keep finding new ways to make it the same, but different. I don't want to say one's better or worse. They're all cool and unique.
Yeah. It's just evolving and unique. Exactly.
But for a game, when you first look at Sprawlopolis, you might not think, oh, this is going to spawn a whole, line of games. You just kind of look at it and you're like, oh yeah, that's really clean, clever, really great game. But to see it kind of evolving.
It's fun to see like when we put like all the covers on like one page, like for, whatever the newest campaign is, we'll put every cover for every expansion and everything. And it's like, wow, this is tiny, but it's huge.
Yeah, it's come so far.
Yeah.
And there's people who swear by a certain expansion or one version over another.
Oh yeah, it's funny watching those discussions.
Yeah, I mean, people get really passionate about it, and there's certain things like I think it came up the other day that like the feed fee is in Agropolis is optional. It's an optional thing that you can use, which I never knew, and like really skewed like how I felt about that version. I was like, oh man, this feed fee is really
yeah. I do say that's the one thing going back that I might have changed, is that I don't think we needed that extra option.
Yeah.
It could be an expansion, it could be a something, but it's like I think it does stand without it pretty well. Like I think we thought we needed a little more than just the pens and the animals.
Yeah.
But the reality is I don't think we didn't need an extra thing.
Well, it's a process, and you learn as you
exactly.
go, and again, to see it sort of evolving in all these different ways, it's not going to be 100% perfect every time, but each iteration feels like a natural evolution and feels like, oh, wow, that's a cool twist. That's a cool... Oh, this speaks to me.
I mean,
personally.
as just a fan as much as anybody else, when they sent me Casinopolis, like I'm expecting, all right, we did the 3, what could be next? Probably like space or like medieval or something.
Right.
They're like, no, it's casinos. And I'm like, what? Wait a second. And then I looked at it and I'm like, hold up. And then I'm looking at it and I'm like, this is really cool.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
It was just like, I did not expect that at all. And it was really cool. It's going to be awesome. And I hope that other people kind of feel the same way. Like, this is a shock, but this is such a cool twist on everything. Space would have just been too expected, you know?
Right. And there is something to it of like, how do you break those expectations? You know, to take a city building game and then turn it into a nature building game, you know, like it's like, that's not the, you know, course I would have thought it would take.
That even introduced issues. It was like, well, what about roads? Like, how do we add roads are a requirement. How do we add roads in nature? And it's like, well, let's just make them more penalizing.
Right, exactly.
They cost -2 points instead of -1.
Yeah, and it's one of those, again, small shifts that I think really emphasizes, and I think, you know, for a game that seems at first blush almost themeless, right?
Yeah.
There's all these little details that just make it sing. And you can do something where it's like, oh, roads now are costly, and that reinforces to the player, like, yes, we're trying to preserve and enjoy nature.
Exactly.
It's just these tiny little tweaks that, again, shift it so much in a fascinating way. It's there's a reason it remains, you know, as popular as it is.
Yeah.
Is that it keeps finding the design team. I shouldn't say the game's not finding anything.
Sprawlopolis has a mind of its own.
Yeah, it does feel like it a little bit, but no, the design team continuously finds these ways to tweak it and improve it and create something new and super cool. So
hi, my name is Lars. I'm from Denmark. In 2020, I played through the entirety of Sprawlopolis, which means that my copy looks like this. The idea for the challenge was actually on Board Game Geek, where Morten Monrad Petersen, the solo guy from Tagmire, Automa, he has a yearly solo and co-op impossible challenge, and he's done that a couple of years. That inspired me that in 2020 I want to play through all 816 combinations of Sprawlopolis. And as you remember, a couple of months into 2020, COVID hit, and I actually had a lot of time at home, plenty of time to play through the games. I ended up playing through and exactly playing at least one game every day. And on the 31st of December, I played my 816th game. I ended up winning 589 of them and losing 218 on normal difficulty. And then in 2021, we had another close down and I needed to figure out something else to do. So I thought, why don't I just play the 218 combinations that I didn't win the first time around and play those through until I won them all. And in total, it took 1,488 plays. And as I wrote a comment on Board Game Geek telling Jason that I want to complain because the game only took one playthrough, then it was used up.
Do you want to tell a story from Sprawlopolis' history? Something that we haven't already covered, which was kind of a lot.
Let's see. Yeah, so we covered all the best one is just how it came about. So another story from its history. Here's a silly one, right? So everybody asks for, you know, they want to play Sprawlopolis like on the floor at a convention in these like, you know, big ways.
Yes, I've said that multiple times. I'm on record.
And we don't have enough money to get a booth that's more than 10 by 10, so there's never enough floor to do it. Is the absolute reality of it. It doesn't make sense that we haven't just made some big cards that are around for in case that kind of happens, because it's amazing and it's incredible. So we tried to think of what we can do that's like along those lines. And at one point we decided we were going to make a wall. It was the Wallopolis in our old office that we were in. And I counted how many cards it needs to make a wall of Sprawlopolis, and it was like lots and lots of games, like 100 copies of the game or whatever. So I'm like, the cost of this is pretty high for this wall that's just kind of silly. But what we had here was the first time we printed it, we printed those 5,500. We probably printed like 8,000 to cover the Kickstarter and then Patreon and then hopefully some additional sales. There were 3 misprints in that first 8,000, in that first set of 18 cards, where we'd used like one card, a version had changed. I think 3 cards like were updated late in the process, but they weren't updated. We didn't have proofing like we do nowadays, and they slipped through, and we printed them. So those 3 cards were misprinted, which meant all 8,000 of those copies we had to buy. We assembled them by hand anyway, but we had to take out those 3. Order 3 more and then put them back in, which added 2 months to our fulfillment and probably dozens of hours of work. But whatever, I'd quit my job. That's what I'm there for.
Right.
If I was still working my job, it would not have happened. But we had 8,000 times 3 cards. We had 24,000 extra cards here. And I was like, we'll just use those to make the mural. We don't have to buy anything.
And you've been hanging on to them for like 5 years.
And the reason I hung on to them was because I was like, I don't want to throw these in a dumpster. I want to see if there's any opportunity to turn a negative into a positive. I don't want to recycle them or whatever we do. We put out ideas. It was like, okay, design a sticker. You know, the sticker can go on these cards, and now these cards are new cards that you can play in the game. And it was like just trying every avenue to reuse them in some way. We would use them for backing for prototypes here and things like that. But I was like, we're going to make this wall. So we made the wall, stuck up like maybe like the first, like, you know, this section of the wall behind me, and stopped because it took forever.
Right, because you have to put each one up.
Yeah, and you want to overlap and you want to make it look something, but you're also only working with 3 different cards, so there's only like maybe 1 or 2 road types, and just like trying to do it. And then like whatever method we did, every day another one would fall down, and then if one fell from behind, it pulled down all the ones in front. So the wall never happened, and I got sick of the cards, and we said, forget it. We just got rid of the cards. It was like a tub of them.
Briefly.
So we intended to do something positive with them, and no. It turned into storing them for 5 years. And then
I mean, if you can't find a good use for them in 5 years, or, you know, and this was clearly not a good use if they weren't, if they were staying up and could not be.
It was so much more complicated than it needed to be. Like, it just was like, we're just going to put them on the wall.
It sounds easy.
Yeah.
Like,
exactly.
just hang up some cards on the wall. Done.
Mm-hmm. It was like, how do we not destroy the wall for our landlord? Let's use something that's not as permanent. They're all going to fall down.
Right. Well, and especially if you're like overlapping them, then everything's even less secure.
And like, we spent so much time like, does this look like a good like overlapping, or like, would you play it differently? And I'm like, it doesn't matter. Nobody's getting that close. Like, it does not matter.
I really like the idea though that somebody just like would walk into the store and be like, misplay. Like, you know,
I could do better than that.
Not
That's the solo player, not the multiplayer player.
Exactly.
Super casual. Well, I was designing this wall as the solo player, which was the exact problem.
That's the problem. Yeah, you needed to play my way, which is just get it up. Doesn't even matter. Nothing needs to connect. Nothing needs to just go.
So that was the Wallopolis that is no more.
That's a shame, because that would be such like a cool, you know, centerpiece of a room.
I think so.
But, you know, you tried it. It didn't work. Move on. You know.
Exactly.
All right. So we've talked a lot about Sprawlopolis, but it's not the only game in the Button Shy catalog. So if somebody had only Sprawlopolis, they'd never played any other Button Shy game, what would you recommend for them next?
So it's interesting because I always lean on popularity and, you know, just look at what's right at the top and think they're at the top for a reason. They get the most common likes, I guess, more than anything else. Like they hit and connect easier. But Sprawlopolis specifically has those two things, which is like the city building like overlapping and the complexity in the combination. So it has incredible variety. So I think someone that plays that is going to be used to that variety. They're going to sort of expect that variety in other games. So I'm trying to think of one of our games that has a good amount of variety baked into the base game and not the expansions.
Yeah.
And I'm struggling there because it really does, like Circle the Wagons is an easy suggestion, but it plays 2-player.
Yeah.
But it's identical in every other way. Skulls of Sedlic is one of those top games where it has that simplicity. It has sort of the tile laying, the placement thing that you like from Sprawlopolis. But the variety is in its expansions. So, Circle the Wagons or Skulls of Sedlic with expansions. And then a third one that always comes to my mind is like, you like tile laying, you like city building or whatever, want to twist it in a weird way. Seasons of Rice does it in a way that you don't expect and turns your brain in a new way. And a lot of other, like, any kind of tile laying thing that we've done leans a little closer to Sprawlopolis or anything, but Seasons of Rice really twists that with the way that things connect. So I cheated and have 3 answers.
Yeah. Well, I'll say I kind of went through the same, analysis. Seasons of Rice is where I settled.
Oh, is it? That's cool.
Because exactly like you said, it's completely different. It's the same, and
it does have the variety too, because you have a different ancestor every game.
Yeah.
That twists things a bit.
And I know from talking to you, and we've done design challenges and stuff like that. There's a lot of people who want to make a Sprawlopolis-like game because it's so good. It's so clean. It's very inspirational. And I think for a lot of people who are either newer designers or just maybe don't know a lot about 18-card games, it's very easy. Like, it's an easy way to kind of enter into that design space.
Yeah, and it kind of feels like it sets some like standards. Like
it does.
The four corner grid, whatever it is, and then variety on the back almost feels like a category of games as opposed to a game.
Yes.
And we've sort of made a category here that we don't want more of those, just because we're going to be doing Opolis games for as long as they're fun.
Yeah.
So yes, I do agree with that.
But I think that's exactly why Seasons of Rice to me then stands out, because if all you've seen is Sprawlopolis and you sort of think like, oh, okay, this is how you do tile laying in 18 cards. Then you look at Seasons of Rice and you say, oh, there's a whole other way to do this.
Yeah.
That can feel so radically different. To me, that sort of then expands now there's different ways to do this sort of same thing.
Agreed.
And I think to me, that was like the one that I settled on as. Also, like, Seasons of Rice is just a lot of fun, I think it was
the year after Sprawlopolis, or the year it came out in a design challenge.
Yeah.
And we were fresh on Sprawlopolis at the time, and it was like, whoa, this is different.
Yeah, it's different. Yeah.
And it was the co-winner of that, and Tulsi Musty won the challenge. So
that's a great challenge.
It holds up and really impressed us.
Yeah. And I think has a neat, where Sprawlopolis, the theme is so sort of abstract. I mean, it comes to life in different ways, but, on a sort of abstract level, like you're building a city. Whereas Seasons of Rice has this like very personal, charming, inviting theme behind it. That makes you say, oh, this is like really, this is a project that somebody really truly loved. And
and like these are people that like come off the card, you know what I mean? Like each of those ancestors like has a little story to them. They have the artwork on it just like really just like pops, like the character really pops. So you can feel a little bit of their story, the connection, whatever. just by looking at just that individual single card,
Yeah.
it just feels very meaningful. And like you said, like the person who made it was very passionate about it.
Yeah.
Which was two brothers. You know, one does design, one does the artwork, and it was, you know, their, you know, not their ancestry, but their culture and everything. They put all that into it. So it does feel very personal.
Yeah, it does. It reads like a love letter,
Yeah.
you know, in a really engaging way. So that would be my pick.
That's mine too.
You know, I think that's...
I'll take it.
So if you like Sprawlopolis, go out there, buy Seasons of Rice. You'll enjoy that one too, I think, in a very different way. Any final thoughts that you have on Sprawlopolis?
No, it's I think it was a little bit of a life changer for everybody involved. It just took off and was expected, but also a surprise. Like, you know, it's a great game. It's still a great game. It's our best reviewed, our best rated, our best selling, drives people to our website every day still.
Yeah.
So I think it's the perfect game to start this off. And it's you're going to see Sprawlopolis from us for as long as we can do it, because I love it just as much as everybody else does.
That's awesome. And it's so cool to see. It's easy to forget that, as a publisher, you are also a fan of the products that you make, like you make things that you believe in.
Oh, I am
and
so
care
excited
about,
when they send an email with a new game,
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can't imagine. Because all three of them, they're super talented. They work so well together. I would imagine every email I would just be like, I'm dropping everything for the day. Like, I got to open this right now.
I forget where I was when they sent Casinopolis. I think I was like traveling or something, and I was like, "Hold up, I'm going to check this out." And I've been waiting for this because I knew it was coming.
Yeah,
but no, they're great to work with, and we've done games by Steven individually. I've worked with Danny on art. I've never met Paul in person. I've met Danny and Steven.
Oh, interesting.
But it's a great group that I love to work with whenever we can.
Yeah. Well, I hope they keep coming back, and you keep having them back for years and years and years to come. Because I'm a big fan of Sprawlopolis and all the games that it has spawned, and I know a lot of people out there are too. So.
Awesome.
All right. Well, thanks for chatting, Jason.
Yeah,
and I'll see you next time.
All right.